Hello, my friends, and welcome to the third season of Brand Your Dream Show. Today, we're talking about something very interesting because we're going to empower your voice with amazing Angela Durrant. She's expert coach, and she's going to tell you how to be visible, how to empower your voice, and show up confidently. Hi, Angela. How are you doing?
I am great. Thank you very much for inviting me here.
Welcome. So tell us a little bit more about what you do because you give us very interesting title, expert coach. So
Mm.
what experts are learning from you?
Yes, well, uh, fortunately, I didn't make the title up myself. It was actually somebody who said, you're very much an expert's coach, as it were. So that by giving the title is people that tend to come to me now, not maybe at the beginning of my career, as it were, tend to already be very good at what they do. They have created an expertise in some level of their business. So they might have been in business a long time. They might have come from a corporate career where they've had a great expertise, say that they were a manager, a senior leader, they might have been in HR, they might have been in wellness or whatever it is, but they have an expertise, they have a skill, and they have been doing it for a long time. They've got experience. But coming out of that career and then coming into maybe being a consultant or a coach and being in business on their own, they're struggling to actually find their voice amongst the myriad of the many. They are struggling to speak about what they do in a way that creates a more memorable impression. They might have been in a career where people came to them, they were the authority in their career, they were the manager, the leader, and so by default of their powerful position, as it were, people would come to them. But then when they actually have stepped away from that, and many people have pivoted during COVID and they want a different lifestyle, so they want to start their own business, etc., they are not able to get that same level of respect that they might have had in their job when it comes to promoting themselves and bringing on clients and more work for themselves online. How did I get into that? I had a 14-year background in specialized voice coaching. So I was a music industry coach, but it was back in 2012 that the first person came to me for public speaking. And it was actually somebody who wanted to do an interview for a job, but he didn't feel as if he'd stand out very much. Now, I got very curious as I was not marketing myself into the business arena. I was a musician. My husband was a music producer. We ran a recording studio. I had a large roster of clients, but I was very curious as to the fact that somebody had kind of made that much of a journey to try and find some personal help to help themselves professionally represent themselves. So I Googled presentation training and skills training, etc. And of course, it goes down page after page after page. But I got really curious. I thought, well, with all of the training that's out there around presentation skills, around communication, around speaking, etc., why did he not feel as if he had received what he needed? And so those curious questions took me on a journey as to where I am now, which is taking that voice coaching, taking that stage background and that skill, and actually helping people to represent themselves in a more unique way uh, in their own businesses, via that through public speaking or through the message that they write. And it was a very eclectic journey to get to this point, but it's been a fascinating one.
I love it. And the fact which I really, really love about both of us, because you have Visibility Club and I have Visibility Gym. And when we had the first conversation, we exchanged it and we're like, oh, it looks like we have same programs. It's literally speaking about visibility, a lot of the things. But then we realized that they're actually quite complementary. And we speak about visibility from the two different perspectives, which lead people to the great results, but we are like complementary experts rather than the competition experts.
Mm,
There is no
mm,
competition anyways, but it was
mm,
interesting to find a colleague. I see you as a colleague rather,
mm,
like, because together we help people to show up confidently and really owning their visibility. So our first question, which our point of discussion, is visibility.
mm.
What do you think? Why visibility is important for business, and what type of visibility businesses need?
Oh gosh, let's unpack that, because I remember sitting in my dining room the first day I decided to open a voice coaching studio, or set myself up in business. And the first question I kind of asked myself, I thought, well, it doesn't matter whether I'm really good at what I do or not that good. Nobody is going to really be able to decide that if nobody knows that I'm here. So first of all, the visibility piece is about making, I think we often get really caught about making ourselves visible, but I recognized it was about people being visible to what you do, almost like making themselves visible to you too. There was this place where we had to meet, that the person who needed me and my skills needed to find a platform, in whatever form that was, to meet, so they could see me and what I had to offer and make a decision to come in my direction. So at its very, very core, visibility to me is it's the essence of marketing, really, which is that ability to for somebody to have awareness of you now in that form. What I did later was kind of unpack it from a personal perspective of visibility, because as somebody, and I will just say this up front, I'm quite an introvert. I mean, I might have spent sort of 30 years on the stage and have no problem doing media, doing video, doing, that's not an issue. That's a trained, I'm skillful in that now in terms of being able to not feel nervous about that. But in terms of this idea of putting yourself out there, I've had just as many issues over the last couple of years as maybe many of your listeners. And I think it's important to say that, because I do think many people sit back and go, well, it's all right for her, it's all right for him, they're more extroverted than I am, or you've got more experience than I have, so it's all right for you. And I'm like, it's not. At every new level, you probably feel those visibility fears, that next level of exposure of who you are and what your business is about, that if you think about that exposure behind it. And sometimes we have an awful lot of thinking about that exposure. And for me, it's the thinking behind that exposure and what we're trying to do that needs most unpacking behind it, because everybody can go out there and create some level of exposure for themselves. You can make a post, you can create a video. We might not be doing it consistently, but we can get visible. But the biggest thing for me about using visibility to grow a business is that you have to be intentional with that visibility. And you have to, and it's okay to work with your personality and grow through that. But it's no good. Like I was laughing with a client yesterday, and the conversation went like this. She was completely overwhelmed. I've been to these networking events, I must follow up and blah, going on. Yeah. And I stepped back and I said, well, she said, oh, this to-do list, I'm stuck on my to-do list. And I said, well, what's on it? And she said, lead generating activities. And I started to laugh because I just thought, good gracious me, that's marketing 101, isn't it? The whole sort of exposure thing. And so she said, lead generating activities. And I said, well, you could put a TV advert together and rival John Lewis. And she just looked at me like, have you gone mad? And the point is like, not all visibility is relevant to you at the stage or place of your business. And if instead of being frightened about it, because I was frightened because I just thought, oh my God, I've got to put myself out there. And oddly, I might be really good at what I do, but that doesn't necessarily mean I feel like how much of me has to be out there? What do I have to say when I'm out there? Do I have to talk about this? And I don't want to talk about that. And so we get ourselves really tied up in knots about this whole idea of going out there, being visible. And when I dialed it back to who my client was and who the other people that we want to attract, as it were, say in the Visible Club, who the type of people we serve, or the type of other types of one-to-one clients that I might serve, etc., you can cut a lot of that out when you simply sort of sit back and go, what's a good way to represent my business in a way that's going to build credibility and trust in the eyes of those type of people? That for me is where visibility that question of visibility now sits, is like, what do I have to create, or how do I have to speak, or what are the assets that I need out there, so that the people that will need to know, like, and trust me can see that I have something valuable to say behind that visibility. So if it helps anybody to realize, I don't find it that easy too,
Mhm.
then that might be helpful for a few people to breathe a huge sigh of relief that you can move past that.
I love it. It's like one of our guests said, visibility is credibility. And pretty
Mm,
much you said something very, very similar, which is interesting. So, what I love to discuss, there are 3 points which you mentioned. So, I was like, okay, that's a question, that's a question, that's a question. So, the question number one, and definitely because I was visiting one of your events when you were talking about the introverts, and I think that's
mm,
why you're referring because it's a recent event.
mm,
So it's an interesting thing because many people confusing being shy and being
mm,
an introvert, and those are
mm.
completely different things. Because introverts are people who actually generate their own energy, so to say, on their
Yeah,
own.
yeah,
Therefore, when they're in public event, they just need to recharge after that. But
yeah.
they're not necessarily shy.
No.
They just prefer deeper conversations because the energy is more valuable, and they would prefer to waste this energy on something more valuable than just few surface conversations and, like, nothing in return. So that's what I know about introverts because I myself an introvert as well. So it's an interesting aspect of that what you say, that we can learn the skills despite we are introverts, and more importantly, despite we can be shy, because shy is also learned behavior. So it can be absolutely overwritten by any kind of training, by
Mm,
yours or mine or any other training on public
mm,
speaking. And as usually most of the fears can be triggered in any situations,
mm,
and the more you go with practice against it, the more you
mm,
build these muscles of visibility, you train yourself, you practice to be less shy or more confident and stuff like that. And definitely people need to hire experts who will help them on this way. Yourself, myself, other people, hire them. That's important. So visibility is one part. Now, credibility, what you said, I loved about this, make a decision. This is where I want to move forward because we will be talking about the authenticity in the next question. But
mm,
to elaborate a little bit, you know, you say that you take the decision, and that make me think,
mm,
is visibility is really first of all a decision which allow us to show up as we are in the right
mm,
places in the right way, to expose ourselves a little bit, because yes, it
mm,
is really uncomfortable. What do you think about
mm.
that?
Um, I think it's a decision as to, I think it's two parts of a decision. It's knowing yourself, first of all, and knowing what you are trying to create, and then maybe looking at the stages that you need to go through. There's nothing more overwhelming than just, I need to get out there, because there's no such thing as out there, as it were.
Yeah.
There are different channels of communication, there are different ways of it, and some of them are relevant and some of them are not. Some of them are just way out of our skill or our comfort zone right now, and
Mm.
others are available to us. So I always say to people, start in a way that makes breathing look easy for you. Just like, you might find that you feel drawn to a particular platform. It might be LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube, etc. But you're not doing it because somebody tells you you should, because
Mm.
actually that is not the right. To do it because somebody else says that you should is following everybody else's, and that's, you're talking about authenticity as well, that's following everybody else's blueprint for how to make a successful business. And I actually think that there are just more creative ways, and I've been really interested right now. I've been following different people deliberately to see how other people use writing or visibility, or the way that they do it, and other people use sort of paid article writing and people follow them, etc., and journalists. And there are so many different ways to
Yeah.
actually build your representation in the world of what you want to say and what you want to do. But the most important thing that I think you have to start with is, what is it that you want to stand for? What is it that you want to say? Because for some people, particularly for people that maybe don't have clients yet, or they're just new into business, they haven't potentially even found that sweet spot of type of client that they work really well with. having a track record of 15 years, I know who I take on and I know who I don't. I know who I do my best work with. I know who lights my fire. But at the very, very beginning of my business, I didn't know who that was going to be. But
Mm.
so I knew that I needed to maybe sift and sort that. So there was lots of people that I worked with in lots of different ways. And little by little, I was able to change the message, change the way that I was showing up, and to represent myself more in the ways that I wanted to go along with. So I think what I'm saying is that it's a process, and it starts with the decision, first of all, to just start, and then to make sense of, well, if you're a journalist, for instance, it makes sense to write. If
Yeah.
you're right, if you are if you're a plumber, it might make sense if to do some how-to videos, or it might make sense to go to networking. It's where you show up, where you are likely going to be in front of people that need your service. That would make the best use of your time and attention, and finding a way for you to do it in a way that makes being more consistent easier for you. So if you feel that you have to force yourself to do something that's just too far out of the comfort zone, you might try it once. And I kind of call it a stretcher case instead of a stretch. You want something that stretches you a little bit, but we don't want a stretcher case, because a stretcher case just completely floors you. You'll do it once and you'll go never again.
Exactly.
So even though video is great, isn't it? 80% more engagement if we do video.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that people have the time or capacity to start doing that straight away. So what can you do that brings you visibly in front of people, where people can see, feel, and hear you better? Well, doing a talk at a networking event, joining
Yeah.
a group of people that you can get to know, that you can sort of find your comfort zone, and then move on to the next stage, and looking at the channels then of the way that you can use your own personality and find your own style. You have to find your own voice in doing this. And I think the authentic part is, and I think there's a difference between, and I will just kind of throw my hobby horse in here, Eve, is like, there's a big difference between, I'll get on the soapbox now, being when people kind of say, somebody says, oh, this is my first event to speak at or whatever, and people go, you'll be fine, just be yourself. And I'm like, that's just about the worst advice you can give people, because which version of yourself do you want to be? People want to be both professional and personable, but they don't know, if they're not used to doing it, they don't know how to actually they don't know how to do that. So what I say is, like, start off somewhere that you can feel comfortable with a group of people, or and then start to pull the skills in that you can do the next level of that speaking, or that visibility, or that ability. Because going from a small talk to suddenly going to a big conference talk, there is a skill level of change, and that is still visibility. So for me, it's like, take the process, start with a decision that you will actually get visible, find somebody who's actually doing something along the lines, or teaching visibility along the lines that you are interested to learn. I don't teach beginners particularly anymore, as it were, but find somebody that can actually, that you can learn from and follow, and go into that process, and go to me, what I call mastery. Go to master one area. Master one area, because it will open the doors to many areas of ability for you to lead in visibility. I think there's a lack of mastery going on.
Yeah,
People
I
don't want to
absolutely
spend a
agree with
long
you.
time learning. They don't want to learn the process so they can be good enough. So there's a few meandering bits there, but that I think is important to say.
There is a lot of misguiding suggestions in the market as well, because
Yeah.
I remember just at the beginning when I started this business as a side hustle, as a Brand New Dream was an agency at the beginning. So we were consulting, we were coaching and stuff like that. So I was doing it as a side hustle while being creative director in the advertising agency and working with huge corporates. But in the evening, like, in a daytime, I would be like, 20,000, no questions. Guys, you need to pay to us, 20,000. It was not a question at all as a budget, just to ask
Mm.
and get it. But in the evening, when somebody would ask me how much a logo would cost or something like that, I would be like, can you pay $200 or something? Same thing, for which
Mm,
I just probably ask, 20,000. So
mm,
for us, for many
mm,
people, when we start the business, it's always very difficult to ask for ourselves to
yeah.
get that visibility. I've been there, remember that. It's crazy because I compared myself literally 3 hours ago on the board meeting of directors in a top corporate, probably in the world, speaking like, no, nobody's business. And
Yeah.
then in the evening, I'm like, oh my God, can you give me? I don't even need your money. I will do it for you for free.
Let me pay you.
Let me pay you. Exactly. It's
Oh,
such a strange psychological
yeah.
idea, which everybody, I think, going through. But the interesting thing, we also don't believe in ourselves. It doesn't matter
No.
what kind of experts we are at the same time, because I received tons of recommendations on like, oh, you have to explain to people what brand is. You have to teach
Mhm.
people. You have to educate people. And then through years, and I did try to do that. It's absolutely useless advice. I mean, never ever teach people that they have a problem, because they will not come to you, because when they will realize they have a problem, they will actually go to expert who speak to their problem,
Yeah.
not to the person who educate them that they have problem. It's a huge difference, which I learned through
Mm.
pain and experience in my own business. But I got a very interesting flashback recently. I had a lovely conversation with a wonderful lady who teaches people who are not experts, so like
Mm.
beginners.
Mm.
And what I'm trying to connect it with, that you say you need to show up for the audience which is relevant to you. I love it so much in your answer about that. It's like, I want to put it with the big letters, probably I will. You
Yeah.
really need to show up for your audience, because if you speak to beginners, they might not know many things. You might need to educate them about
Mm.
certain things. But then I was recording the intro for my podcast, because Brand Your Dream is going to be a podcast as well.
Mm.
And I'm recording that, standard intro, what the podcast is
Mm.
all about. New to me, I'm experimenting. So I sent that to her. And she's like, look, you need to explain people what brand is, because they probably don't know. And I'm like, no, and I didn't resist. I just really, so if I resist, or it's just like, knowledge. It was knowledge. I knew that I never ever had paid client who doesn't know what brand is
Mm.
and why they need to pay me my money for this
Mm.
brand.
Mm.
I just never met that kind of clients. A lot
Mm.
of conversations with people who have no clue never paid me for that. you
Mhm.
know, that's a
Mm.
different story.
Mm.
So for beginners, knowing who the audience, how to show up with which message for this audience, to not turn the visibility into consistent, roller coaster of that visibility, show
Mm.
up everywhere and then be really exhausted. I
Mhm.
think it's huge. So that what you say about showing up for the audience is really, really big thing.
It
So
is. It is. And
wait a
I just
minute.
wanted to
I'm
kind of,
asking the question
oh,
about
get in there.
authenticity, wrapping
Get
into
in there.
that.
Get in there. I don't want
Yeah,
to
yeah.
jump in.
No, no, no. I mean, because I just want to wrap it into that so we can continue with the
Mm.
authentic message in that. So showing up for the audience, right? We're showing up with our message, which is authentic for us, as you said, super comfortable for us, and that attract the clients. What do you think is connection with the authenticity and getting clients? Because I didn't ask that before, by the way. You're the
No.
first person on the show who are asking about that. It's a big responsibility.
I'm going to take that responsibility by
Yeah.
the horns, and I'm going to use it in one word. It's called understanding positioning. And it's positioning. And I'll relate back to being a voice teacher, and something that I understood that I can, if I'll talk about it in a different medium and then I'll translate it over. um, with singers in those, this is talking 10 years ago plus, but when I used to train singers, people used to try and hit notes in a completely uncoordinated way. Okay. And if we turn that over to business, they're often trying to get clients in a very uncoordinated way.
Mhm.
Okay. They don't realize what they're doing. It's all innocent kind of thing. You don't know what you don't know. But say, for instance, a singer would be trying to sing something, and it wasn't working, and they would get very nervous and they would get very insecure because the thing that they're trying, in the way that they're trying it, isn't working. Okay. So they don't think the truth, they don't know what the truth is, in other words. So they kind of go, well, what's the problem? Like, oh, why can't I do it? What's the matter with me? And so there becomes this sort of insecure place because they're trying to do something, they get an idea for what they want to do, they're trying to do it, but it ain't working.
And they're showing as they are. That's
Right,
the worst part. They are
right.
clearly authentic at that moment.
They're totally authentic, right? But in
Yeah.
a fearful manner, right? In a fearful
Hmm.
manner, okay? So let's say they haven't had any sort of experience, or they haven't had somebody to come in to help them with that, and they go to an audition or they go and sing something. They're going to be really nervous. They're not going to represent themselves as well as they could do. As I said to people, everybody has a voice. Actually, everybody is born to sing, but not everybody will use or develop their voice to the full capacity that it's capable of with the amazing machine that we've actually got. Not everybody needs to become a Pavarotti, some people will become a Pogues or something. It's like, it doesn't need, not everybody has to develop like a mastery at the highest level of everything. But if you want to be able to represent your business well enough and authentically, you've got to understand your voice, basically, and you've got to understand position. And positioning is kind of twofold. And I used to say with singers that the biggest thing that they didn't understand is they would kind of like, if there was I say there's three principles to singing and there's three principles to business, okay? And I used to call it pitch, position, and power. So let me quickly explain it. Pitch is like the truth thing, right? It's the thing. Like, it doesn't matter if you overact, doesn't matter what you do. If you're not on pitch, it doesn't matter. So that's about your message, your truth. If you can't calibrate to the real thing, the real why, the real reason that you're in business, the thing that you're here to do and to serve people, then it won't matter how many programs you take. It won't matter who does the work for you. It won't matter which snazzy logo you have. It will all be off to start with. It'll feel off and it just won't have that traction behind it. So we have to keep calibrating to pitch all of the time. And pitch is that sense of truth that we're about. What is it? Like when Apple say we're here to make a dent in the universe, it's like everything they do follows through on that mission and that vision. And if we cannot feel for that and that pitch for that, then we're going to really struggle to put all the other pieces in place. What people then tend to do is they go, right, I've got my mission and my vision. Here's my pitch, right? Okay, let's just go for it. And then it's that power. They start like, it'll be like, get leads, get clients kind of thing. And they'll just throw themselves out there with good gusto. There's no end of companies that promise you to have 90 leads a week kind of thing. But are they the actual people that are really going to buy what you want, to sell? Are they going to be your best clients? Are they going to pay you? Is it going to be a complete waste of time and money? You've got no way of knowing when you just throw a bunch of effort at something. So the missing piece for every single person, particularly for solopreneurs, because you do have a limit to your energy and a limit to time, and especially if you're growing, you have to think about positioning. And for a singer, positioning the pitch was what resonates, what's the felt experience of how actually, this resonates to actually put it in the right place. So that when it comes to being the marketplace is, where are you? And I think you'd said it's like, what level of skill do you have? Now, it might be brilliant. You might have the skill to go and coach the young football team, as it were. Do you know what I mean? And you have the skill to go and do that and to be a referee at the Saturday football match. But you don't have the experience, the credibility, the reputation, and the client base yet to go and do an international, England versus, Germany at the highest level. And so you have to know where you are. And it's all right to start where you are. There's this kind of idea that suddenly everybody has to be up there and call themselves an expert to begin with. And I spent, before I had a big opportunity in 2017 to change the nature of my business. I'd spent 10 years coaching probably nearly 1,000 different singers and some speakers. But in 2017, I suddenly had an opportunity. Let me see excuse me in the back. My dog is now
The
eating.
best prop ever.
Best prop ever is my dog has suddenly entered into the equation here. Sorry.
Yeah.
But I had this
Video bomb
opportunity.
our
I
interview.
know, I've been video bombed by my English Bull Terrier. So in 2017, I had this opportunity to suddenly train senior leaders at the Minister of Defence. And people were suddenly saying to me, well, how the heck did you actually get that? What did you do? What did you do to get that? And the thing is that I'd spent 10 years mastering my craft. So by the time I had an opportunity to be in that, I was able to operate at that level with those people.
Yeah.
So I want to say number one is do not despise the day of small beginnings. You often cannot charge a full whack when you're at the very beginning of your business. Do not despise that or feel bad about that. Learn about where your positioning is you can be a big deal in a local market if you will understand how to go and represent yourself well in the local community, or being in local networks, or even online locally, as it were, and digging into a community or a group of people that you can be visible and valuable to, and learn to actually hone your craft and your expertise, because that will lead you to more referrals, and those referrals are what gain you your credibility and your exposure further through. There will then come a time, as you keep doing that, there will come a time when you suddenly realize, excuse me, where you realize that you're ready for a bigger exposure. And then you'll look at your branding, you'll start to reposition yourself. And that's the difference, is you'll go, okay, well, we're ready to take more territory. We want to have more clients. We want to be able to take on more team. So it'll make sense to upgrade the way you represent yourself outside in the marketplace. But that is something that I think people need to grow into. And there's such a race and a rush to be a big deal that actually they are not the real deal. And if they start in being the real deal, you will bit by bit grow into either the boutique business or the bigger business that you are capable of becoming. And it can be a much more natural, organic process than suddenly having to force yourself out to be a big deal just to be seen and heard. I think that is where people make a really simple mistake. They're not positioning themselves. They don't know where they are right now in their own position. They can either over or underestimate their abilities. If you're overestimating your abilities, you're going to kind of feel people are going to be disappointed in what you've got, because you'll have an imposter syndrome, because you'll feel as if somebody's going to kind of find you out as a fraud. But if you're underestimating your abilities, then that's a self-confidence issue, and that's a worthiness issue, and it's time to kind of own a little bit more of the abilities that you've actually got. So sometimes there's a piece of work to do around that mindset issue to get to that place. But once you've passed that, you can actually start to go, look, I know what I'm speaking about. I know my stuff. I've got my experience. Here's the stories. Here's the testimonials. Here's the work that I've done. And then you can start to build the actual representation of that on a more tangible external basis outside. But make no bones about it, your visibility starts within. It starts with your own identity. It starts with what inspires you. It starts with where you want to start having an initial impact. Then it starts with other people deciding that you are an influence, and they will start to recommend you. And then you can actually start to put all of the stuff around you that illuminates that whole brand on a much bigger level. And it's not an outside in thing, it's an inside out thing.
I love it. It's absolutely interesting and valuable insight for people to understand that connection. And I think it's like a first time, as I said, we're talking about this on the show, because many people talk about their authenticity from the perspective of the message, be yourself and stuff like this, how to be yourself. But it's a lot about positioning. It's a lot about the resonance. What I really love, like you say, pitch and then resonance, and that it literally how we resonate with people with this message. Do people
Yeah,
really need us? Do people
yeah.
really resonate with this message at all? And it's a lot about positioning for sure, which I absolutely love. Your mathematical approach, as I call it. It's like, factual approach. And I again say the word fact. I didn't mean whatever you heard. Anyways, so let us get with this wonderful note to the expert questions, because I
Go for it.
absolutely want to hear from you. What are your best three advice, the expert advice for people to actually unleash their voice,
Mm,
unleash their capacity, and connect with people?
mm. I think the first thing to say is it starts with conversations, which is the one thing that most people don't want to have. It starts with having conversations, and not a conversation where you just talk to people about what you do, hoping that they're going to be a client. You have to put that off the table. First of all, your job through your conversation is to calibrate. It's to calibrate to the other person, to step into the mind. I love the quote. I've always said the quote by Jim Rohn, the marketer, which is, your job, your only job, is to enter the conversation that the customer is having in their head and not the one that you're having in yours. So this conversation that you have to have, is getting into conversations is the first key to getting clients. And now often people will say to me, yes, but Angela, how do I get into a conversation? I go, they're all around you, except that we're not looking for the opportunity to be in conversation. We've got an agenda to get a client. And it's a little bit of a tough, it's a little bit of a tough space to be in. It's a bit of a, can I say that my dog is eating a hairbrush right next to me? He's bombed me. He's kind of like video bombed me, and now he's eating a hairbrush. Oh dear me, I'm so sorry. The joys of working from home, eh? So conversation. How do you get into a conversation? Go to some networking events. If you're in some Facebook groups, hang out in there. Start to kind of, socially listen, watch what's going on. Get into a couple of conversations and ask some questions. What I call, the next thing is, so the first one is conversation. The second one is, you've got to be curious in those conversations, in the questioning, because you want to know what people think and feel. Because I think you'd said about problems before, and most of the time I'm saying to people, what problem are you actually solving in your business? Not the one that you think you're solving, but the one that you need to actually solve for people. There needs to be, certainly at the beginning, and often all the time, a level of being able to adapt your skills to a changing market all the time. People's buying habits always change. What people bought 6 months ago or 6 years ago, they probably won't be willing to pay for today, etc. Look at information on YouTube, for instance. 10 years ago, you could sell an ebook for $67 and people would buy it. You can't sell free now. So you have to really have a little bit more savvy here. Is like the way to actually create those clients and to start that reputation building, particularly as a solopreneur, where you haven't got an extensive amount of time or money to throw at everything, is to actually get into conversation and to ask curious questions like, what is it like to, what are their client, what's it like to be in their world? What's their frustrations? What are they, what do they wish that they could wave a magic wand over? There are some obvious and some curious questions that if we ask them and we just kind of quietly, if we quietly shut up, then we can, don't laugh. My dog's eating, he's now eating his just plastic bags. I'm trying to hold this together, Eve. But it is, so that's the first one, is conversations. Why do people not want to get into conversations? Because they think if they put a funnel in place, then they don't have to have one and the money can just flow in. Well, the money can't flow in a funnel. If you can't sell one-to-one, if you can't have a conversation with somebody and ask for business and somebody give you objections and questions and you're able to clarify and answer them, if we can't do that, we're never going to be able to put a complicated series of funnels and things and webinars together that will suddenly sell, because they only sell at 1%, and you can close business at 40 to 60% if you're having a conversation with somebody. So the first thing that you have to do with your visibility is your visibility has to have an end outcome, and that's a conversation. Because for the majority of people that might be listening to you, they're selling more higher priced, they're not selling a $20 ebook or something, they're actually selling programs and services that are hundreds and thousands of pounds. Well, that's going to actually be sold through a conversation. So whatever visibility that you do, you need a call to action, you need a link on the end of it so people can come back into your world, that if they're not ready to buy, or if they want to check you out a little bit more, find out more about you, they can come and see a little bit more of what you're up to see if what you do and what you say resonates with what they're wanting. So you have to have calls to action and you have to lead everything to a conversation. Those are the things, that's the point of your visibility.
Mm-hmm.
That's it for me, is like, that's the point. Anything else you do is a means to an end.
Okay, second suggestion.
Second suggestion. Okay, so first of all is the conversation.
Hmm.
Second suggestion is work on your communication skills, because particularly around your 60-second pitches, particularly around speaking, particularly around the ability that when you are maybe doing a video or you're putting something together, you have some skills around that communication. The ability to answer people's objections and questions. I give you a story yesterday. I actually left my house and went to meet a person, a human person, which doesn't happen that often, as it were, but I met somebody and I was really interested in this lady's work. Okay, really, really interested. There was something around creative thinking, and there's a sort of neuro pathway to that. And I was really interested, so interested in the fact that I was even considering doing some work with this person if she had an irresistible offer and a package that worked for me. So I said, well, how do you work? How do things work for you? How do you put this together? You know, how would you work with somebody? And her answer to me consistently was, it depends. And and the
Yeah.
problem with that is that is not an answer. You know, she was hedging her bets, and she did not have packages and programs and anything. There was no clarity, both in what she was saying or selling or saying. You've got to have some communication skills so that you can actually answer those things. And I think the third thing is you need to have clarity on your packages and your programs. And the only reason why people won't do that is they're either thinking too big picture, that they need to try and do all of these things with a person, or they haven't yet had the courage to just put things into a format that people can say yes and no to. Well, that's scary, because now you're going to deal with rejection. Well, you need that. You need to have the no's. You need to fail fast. You need to know how to position those offers to make them irresistible for people to say yes. And when people are saying no, we've got to have the courage and the communication to say to them, why is it a no? Just, help me understand for my sake, why is it a no? Help me to refine this, because I want to do good work in the world. I want to be able to, pay my bills, as it were, build my business. But if I'm not getting that feedback, that customer feedback from that communication, then it's going to be impossible to do. So I say you are always getting 100% feedback. It's just that we may not like it. So we have to work on those communication skills. And the third one is coaching. It is really wise to get coaching. It's hugely important to have somebody to fast track that process, because you pay what somebody described once as a gap tax. And
Hmm.
and the gap tax is the gap between.
Sorry, guys, we have dog on the
We
background. For
do have
anybody
dog.
who
I'm
on
so sorry.
podcast, they will not see, but they need to know there is a dog there also
Oh,
giving the
and we
interview.
tried this.
Go on.
My husband let him in the middle. Right. So is the third thing is coaching. So you need to have some coaching, and it's not because it's coaches selling coaching. If the top performers in football and sports and musicians, etc., if they know the value of having a coach on the team, so that that coach can see things that they can't see, they want to play at the highest level. They need to be able to shave off those habits and those tendencies that are going to actually prevent them from positioning themselves to win at the highest level. So the coaching is really, really important, because it fast tracks progress for you. And there is coaching often at very many levels for people. That's why there is somebody for everybody. But if you want to fast track your success, then you have to have coaching.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's interesting that when I began with this side hustle business and all the things, I realized that I need to have a coach, but I didn't know that I afford the coach or something like that. But for now, I have three coaches, so it's really like the more you grow in your business, the more expert level of your audience is, the more coaches you may potentially need. And it doesn't mean that you have three same coaches. Like
No.
I have the self development coach, I have a mentor, for like the personal growth, and I have business coach. So it's like completely completely different areas where you just need to have a person who keep you accountable, really, like, telling you that, okay,
Absolutely.
that's vision is something crazy, so
And
really
well,
coaches and
the
needed.
truth is that just as in voice, as in everything, people can't hear themselves. Like the amount of time, you work on your voice, but you can't hear yourself as other
Yeah.
people do. We lack objectivity and we lack perception. We lack that perception and that sort of objectivity needed for to operate so that people can actually see and you can represent yourself in the way that you truly want to. And there's nothing wrong with lacking objectivity, but it's the humility and the willingness to actually own that understanding and say, right, I want to be the best that I can be. I want good clients. I want my business to survive. I want that visibility and that time and that effort that I'm putting into things. I want that to be worth what I'm doing. I tell you, there is nothing more frustrating than going out with enthusiasm, putting a load of things together, posting, doing all the things that people do, and then collapsing in an exhausted heap at the end of a month or 90 days with very little results for it. We've all been there, probably. It's that problem that so many solopreneurs or small business owners suffer from.
Mm-hmm.
But the important thing is not the failure of doing that, it's repeating the same problem. So you want to be what I call hungry, not starving. Starving people will kind of they won't want to actually work on the thing that's going to make the difference. They'll want to go and do it for free. They won't want to put the time, money and effort in. They buy into having a business, but they won't commit to what it actually takes to take that business through to the next level. And it might be a little bit of a strong message for people, but I really don't mind that strong message anymore, because I'm not here to curry favor. I'm here to help people get the results that they're not getting elsewhere. So when people do tend to come to me for certain things, it's simply because they've either got to a certain level where what they've got can't take them to the next level, or they've spent a load of money and got frustrated for 18 months, but they haven't positioned themselves into the marketplace. They don't know what their message is about. They're not really sure the real authentic zone of genius that makes them unique and different to everybody else. That foundational work that makes you own that place on the world stage for yourself has not been done. They've just simply bought into a load of marketing that has messed with their expectations, unfortunately, and promised them a whole load of stuff without any foundations in there. So it's a bit like a pack of cards. You blow on it and it'll all fall down. Can you recover from that? Is there any hope and joy at the end of my rant, as it were, in the end of this, with my dog making impromptu kind of things in the middle of your podcast, which I could just feel awful for? Of course there is. The first thing is just what I call is like, be kind with yourself, but not the kind that leads to excuses. Is be very kind and compassionate. It's so important that you do not criticize or blame yourself for the mistakes or any of the things that you've done or so far, is because that's wasted energy. And smarten up pretty quickly and go, where do I want to take this business? I want to bring in a certain amount of clients this month. I want to do, I'd like to launch this program. This is something that I really, really want to do. Then go, great, you want to do that. Okay, next step is, what's working, what's not working? Okay, what are the gaps in my skill? What are the things I know I need to be visible? I know I'm not so good on camera. Right, go message Eve, etc. I know I want to do that kind of thing. Or if it's that, on my perspective, is they don't know how to grow an audience, as it were, or they want to put the mechanics of an online business together, or they want to go speak on a conference stage, or they know that they want to do YouTube videos, but nobody's paying attention to those. Fine, come and have a conversation with me. But whatever it is, find the gap that you know that you are not, and allow yourself the uncomfortability for a moment to stretch into it. That's getting out of your comfort zone. It's not about forcing yourself to do things that you don't want to do. It's about understanding that you really want a business and clients. Now, what do I actually have to do now to make that an inevitable that happens, and not just a hopefulness? And at that point, I promise you, if you're listening to the sound of my voice long enough and my dog making an impromptu sort of appearance, hopefully that has given you a little bit of a wake up call to go, there is the right people for you. And particularly if you're following Eve, absolutely do that work with her, because that's the place of beginning of this, that courage, that confidence, that ability to know how to put those stuff together, to have that, and then work with Eve, work with other people to put those pieces in place and learn how to analyze, so that you start to make better decisions around your visibility. And that's where I'm coming to from it is, you, until you have those things in place, you will be making often incorrect decisions around your visibility. But it doesn't have to be that way. Get the right team around you, get the right skill set around you, and you will actually grow. That is an inevitability.
I absolutely love it. I'm switching off my microphone because something is flying over my house and it's incredibly loud. So we have really disturbed podcast.
Not as much as my
So
dog, unfortunately,
yeah.
is it?
So
You
how people
know,
can connect with you?
oh my
Tell them
gosh.
about your links and your
Oh
fantastic
dear.
lead magnet.
Don't these make the best ones, isn't it? When, when you've got something, you're trying to be really professional, and this is just total life, isn't it? When, the dog just you couldn't make this up. He's brought the bacon packet in, and he's kind of brought the bag in, and all this kind of bananas. So how can people connect with me? Back at the end of March, we have a 8-week program that's about to be run. I've run it 3 times before, and it's called Speak with Impact. And this is about unleashing your voice, as it were. But there's something that's in there that I want to actually give people access to, that's completely free. Unleashing your voice physically, because I don't know whether that you realize, but nobody can actually listen to a boring voice for more than a couple of minutes. And nobody really wants to listen to an aggressive voice or a rushed voice, etc., when we're actually presenting. So I have a 16-minute masterclass that I'd love to just gift your listeners, that's actually there to transform your speaking voice and instantly make your communication more impactful. And it's actually a very simple exercise that professional speakers and singers and stage performers use all of the time to actually unleash and supercharge their physical voices. And I know that you would actually find it, your listeners would find it incredibly interesting when you communicate with your full presence. Your words actually live and sort of inspire people at the same time. And I'd love to give that to people in the link.
Absolutely fantastic. All the links somewhere below or in the description. And I encourage you to connect with Angela and absolutely download whatever she recommends you, because I think we will add a lot more links, like to her site, to her program, to the description. So you will have all the opportunities to connect with her in person and purchase some of her incredible programs. Thank you so much, Angela, for this interview.
Oh, thank you so much.